Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca. If you haven't been here before, welcome. So today's video is all about, you guessed it, Hulu's Only Murders in the Building. We are working on season 3, episode 3 today, going through the clues and then discussing some theories for what the season is going to end up being like. But first, if you have not watched season 3, episode 3, then do not watch this video because there will be spoilers. We're going to be talking openly about the murder and the whole case, and we might even reference season 1 and season 2, so if you are not all caught up, make sure to go check those out first. I have other videos that I will link up above covering all the episodes in season 1 and season 2, as well as season 3, episode 1 and 2 each have their own video here on my YouTube channel. And speaking of my YouTube channel, I am trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of this season of the show, and I would absolutely appreciate it so much if you guys would subscribe, like, hit the bell notification, comment down below, share with friends who also like Only Murders. All of those things really help me out and get me closer to my goal of hitting 1,000. It just means so much to me, so thank you to those of you who have subscribed already, and if you haven't, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button. So now let's get into season 3, episode 3, Grab Your Hankies. So basically we start off the episode with Kimber being the narrator, and she's saying that everything begins with a single spark. We watch as Oliver kind of struggles to piece together this show into a musical as he's gotten some new inspiration from last episode. And we hear Howard talk about multiple times that his cousin works for State Farm, Moses Morris, and that he could possibly get them a sponsorship so that they no longer have to deal with Donna and Cliff, who are the two producers of the show. So that's just an interesting call out, because is that possibly a reason for murder? We continue watching the episode. We see like Mabel and Charles in her apartment, and I did just want to point out that I do feel like we've lost some of the magic of the first season and the second season. Like, for example, we haven't seen Mabel painting or doing any of her artwork, and it was such a big thing to her and to us. It was such a big plot point. Like, even her apartment had a painting in it of all the different people in the Arconia, and I get that her aunt decided to sell, and so maybe they decided to redo the whole thing, but the way the apartment looks now is so different than what I remember it as, like when it was Mabel's place. And so it's just kind of throwing me off. Like, we haven't seen her knitting, we haven't seen her talking about artwork, going to art galleries. I just feel like sometimes we pull a little bit too far away from the love and passions of the original season. So we hear Charles say that the cops have said that Ben's blood was clean, that there was no poison found in it, because we know that was originally a theory that Mabel had almost immediately when Ben fell on stage and collapsed. Mabel says that it could be succinylcholine chloride, and if we look that up, it is basically like a muscle relaxant that they use during surgery or other medical procedures. So I guess Mabel is thinking that that might have something to do with Ben collapsing on stage. We also know that they changed Death Rattle into Death Rattle Dazzle, and that it is going to be a musical now, and it has 3 babies in it, so it's about triplets instead of just the 1 baby, which I did think was interesting. Like, why change it to the number 3? What does this represent? Is this a red herring, or does this matter to us? We also learn that Dickie is now Loretta's manager, and Loretta says that he's been sad over the death of Ben, and Oliver makes this comment asking if Dickie and Loretta have become close chums, which I kind of thought was strange, because it kind of felt like he was insinuating that there was like maybe a romance aspect there. But it did look suspicious to me, but it didn't make me think that there was some sort of romance going on. It made me think that maybe they have some sort of relationship that goes beyond him being her manager. Like, maybe they've known each other for a while, maybe they are related and they didn't know it when they originally met. Like, I just feel like there's more to the story there, and I do feel like Dickie is important for, you know, solving the murder. Maybe he's not the murderer, but I do feel like he's probably a key piece. We learn that Loretta has auditioned for a new show. It is some sort of spin-off of Grey's Anatomy about burn victims, and she would play the mother figure in this TV show. So I think that's an interesting pull, that, you know, this, again, these familial relationships coming up, her being the mother, like her being the nanny and taking care of these children. It's just interesting. So then we have a kind of interesting tidbit where Loretta mentions to Oliver that his show could really be a success, and they're talking about how his show's kind of crazy, but it can still be really special as long as there's heart. And Loretta talks about Little Shop of Horrors, and it was a show that she auditioned for. She didn't get the main part for, but she said at the heart, it's just a simple story of a boy who would do anything for the girl that he loves. Now, it's interesting because when you look up Little Shop of Horrors, the film, the whole story of Little Shop of Horrors is that this guy, Seymour, is in love with Audrey, this girl who kind of doesn't give him the time of day, and he later discovers a flower in the flower shop that they work for, a plant that only feeds on human beings, and what do you know? He feeds Audrey's boyfriend to the plant. And who plays Orrin, Audrey's boyfriend? Steve Martin. So it is interesting that there's that connection there, that Steve is in this show, but other than that, I'm not seeing any sort of connection. Sometimes they do include these plays, musicals, movies in the show to give us hints about different things. So anyway, I think it's just a little nod to Steve Martin being in the movie. We've also got a decent number of shots inside of Ben's apartment, which is in the penthouse suite where Sting and Amy Schumer both lived. This is just always interesting because it's so different than what we've seen before. You know, in the first season they bring Sting a turkey and they end up in his apartment, and now we're back, but this time it's very Ben themed. You've got the giant cobra right outside of the elevator. You've got all these different photos and paintings of Ben and his face on the walls. It's just an interesting change, and Mabel even says something along the lines of like, this is my favorite apartment. This is my favorite version of this apartment that I have ever seen. So that was pretty funny as well. And she is, of course, with Taubert, who they're both kind of snooping around looking for something. Neither of them wants to admit why they're there. So they just kind of agree to leave each other to snoop around when, of course, Dickie comes into the room and starts cleaning up the apartment because obviously Ben doesn't live there anymore and they have to hide. Something interesting about this part of the show is that Dickie thinks he's alone. He throws the Cobra egg, I think that's what it is, and cries, "God damn it, Ben, why?" And then he says something along the lines of, "Sorry, I'm so sorry, Ben, I'm sorry." So we're kind of thinking, what does this mean? You know, for him to come in and say, "Why, Ben, why?" Obviously we could say, you know, why did he die? But that was obviously not Ben's fault. So what is Dickie saying, "Why, Ben, why?" Is this him saying, "Why did you like force my hand? Why did you make me kill you? Why did you treat me this way and push me to my absolute limits and force my hand," basically? And then he says, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, Ben." Is this an admission of guilt? "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." Is it like, I did it, I'm the murderer? Or I have some sort of like relationship to this murder? Because at this point it does kind of seem like maybe Dickie is too obvious of a choice, but I do think that he does have some sort of involvement in Ben's murder, even if he wasn't the murderer himself. Maybe he knows who did it. You know, once Dickie leaves the apartment, obviously like Mabel and Taubert have had their moment in this armoire, and he admits that Ben took his camera the night that he died and brought it into his dressing room and that it was still recording. So we now learn that Taubert is looking for the basically like footage of what happened the night that Ben died on stage. And we obviously know that Mabel is snooping around herself. So hearing this information, she swipes the drive off of Taubert and says, you know, "Ta-ta, Tabby," and yeah, she takes it. So now she has it, only to later learn that there's a password, but you know, we'll get to there. We're kind of flipping back and forth between Mabel and Taubert and the cast and crew practicing for the, musical that they're now trying to create. And we hear Kimber say to Charles that she's been numb since Ben died. But I just wanted to point out that we still don't really know what their relationship was. We don't know if it was a romantic connection or if there was something else going on there. Was it a friendship? He says that he messed it up, but we don't know what kind of relationship they had. And it's interesting for her to say that she's been numb since he died, because it does suggest that she had more of a relationship with him than probably most of the cast and crew. We also see Loretta and Oliver sit back down at the piano, and it's interesting, there's a moment where Loretta says, "Oh look, it's us back at the piano," and Oliver kind of says, "What?" You can see it in her eyes, her confusion, because she's like, did we not just share this moment like a couple of days ago? So it kind of feels like Loretta is more interested in Oliver than Oliver is in Loretta. That might not necessarily be true, but it just seems like Loretta is more invested in their romance and Oliver is just kind of more invested in his show. His brain is not on like love and romance. Dickie comes in after this, after the rehearsal and everything, and is so excited to tell Loretta that she did get the mother role on the burn unit show, and she's absolutely pumped about this as well. It's very exciting news for her, considering she's never really been selected to be a part of anything before. And so you can tell that she wants to take it, that she's excited, and we obviously see Oliver say to her, like, you can't leave me, you can't leave the show, I discovered you. And then they have this whole fight where he tells her that she's under contract. But a question that I did have was, is there some motivation for Dickie to get Loretta away from New York? Like, is he interested in continuing his management business and getting as far away from this investigation as possible? Does that make him suspicious? Is he trying to get out of here? And they also seem to have more of a relationship than two people who just met, you know? Like, Loretta comes over, she grabs him, she's screaming, "Dickie, Dickie!" She's jumping up and down and like basically hugging him. He seems really excited for her and almost like a little awestruck by her. And so it just made me think, are these really two people whose paths have just crossed a couple times, who don't have any sort of relationship outside of, you know, now he's her manager? Or is there something more there? Is there some sort of family relationship? Is she his aunt? Is she his mother? Is she his, you know, long lost blah blah blah? Like, I'm like, did she put him up for adoption and you know, he's Ben's half brother or Ben's stepbrother or Ben's adopted brother? Like, there's these questions going through my head where I'm like, I just feel like there's more there than the basic, like, oh, I've seen you around a few times and I've said, hey, I'll be your manager now because I have availability. It just seems like there's more there. He even says to her, like, he's kind of pushing her to take the show, and he says that this is your chance, Loretta, to not have to scrounge for opportunities and to have some stability now. So it seems like he's really interested in, like, her best interest in some ways. Like, he's like, I want stability for you. I want success for you. I want you to get out of here. And yet, you know, we know that she ends up deciding to stay. We, you know, continue on to see Mabel and Taubert once again interacting with each other when she realizes that the drive that she has is, like, you know, password encrypted. She ends up going to find him at his favorite, you know, breakfast spot that he had told her about, and saying to him, like, you need to unlock this because the man who went to jail is not the man who killed Ben Glenroy. And Taubert, you know, eventually concedes and says, I don't want to be the nature guy who sits in the tree and watches the elephant die. You know, like, I want to help. I don't want to be the bystander anymore. And so he decides to share the video with her, and we're still flipping back and forth. So we've got Oliver talking to Loretta and asking her to do the nanny's lullaby, saying that he believes that it's the heart of the show. And so he describes the scene to us. The triplets cry out in the night, their mother has died, but they are not alone because their nanny is there to protect them. So it almost seems like the nanny has transitioned into a more prominent role in the musical. I mean, their leading man is dead, so maybe Loretta would technically be the star of the show at this point. Is that another reason why she might have murdered Ben? We don't know, but it does seem like if she's the heart of the show, it does seem like she'll probably have a larger role to play. She sings, we get Meryl performing, stunning, it's amazing, and you know, she's singing about being the lighthouse for these children. She says, my love is a lighthouse, and that they should follow her light to come back home. And so we get more of this familial, like, I am a mother figure and I'm guiding you. I'm drawing you back to me out of the dark and into the light. I'm showing you the way kind of thing. And Loretta has now not only been mentioned as the mother figure, as the nanny, which she's had multiple different dialogues to show us that she's, you know, the mother figure who would kill to protect the children in her charge, and who, you know, guides them like a lighthouse out of the darkness. But also she's been cast as the mother on this burn victim show. We also know from past episodes that she is an aunt. There's like a piece of paper on her fridge that says, Merry Christmas, Aunt Loretta, something along those lines. But there is this continued question of like, maybe she's not mother by birth, but mother by like taking up that mothership role. And what does that mean for us in this play? Was she acting as a mother to Dickie? Was she acting as a mother to Ben? Was one of them or both of them her child that she had to give up? These are all, you know, branches of theories where I'm like, oh, how is she performing as a mother in this role? That's what I'm really curious about, and I feel like that's what they're pushing. So then we flip back to Taubert and Mabel watching the video of Ben on the night before he died, and we see him yelling that this thing in his room will destroy his life. He says like, go away, like, of course you're still here, you're gonna destroy my life, but I want you so bad, like blah blah blah. And I immediately thought that he was talking to a plate of cookies, because we saw his reaction to the cookies at the like first show reading. So it would be most obvious to me that that's what he's talking to, is like a plate of cookies. And I think the consensus for most people is that we think he's talking to a plate of cookies. It would also make sense because there's no response, there's no back and forth, it's just silent. So there's really no fight, it's just one-sided. But is it possible that the plate of cookies that were in Ben's room, which clearly caught him off guard, if that's what he's yelling at, were poisoned? Was he yelling at a plate of cookies, and were they poisoned in some fashion? I also think that in that moment they're very heavily suggesting that it's Kimber and that she is the one that he wants so bad. Like, they're really pushing this romance between the two of them, and I don't think it was a romance. I don't know what it was, but I don't think that they were romantically involved. I think whatever he messed up had to do with something else. And of course, the only person who doesn't have their hanky is Kimber. Or at least as far as we know, she doesn't have her hanky. She tells Charles. Maybe other people don't either, but she says like, oh, I must have lost it or donated it to a good cause. We know that Loretta has decided to stay, and we also see Kimber narrating the end of the show saying, when a spark finally catches fire and you can finally see it, then the only place you want to be is at the center of that fire. But if one person is shining a little brighter than the others, it's a competitive business. You might have to snuff them out. So this very much suggests that, did she snuff Ben out because it's a competitive business and he was taking up too much of the limelight? We don't know, but I would say that because of how much they've been pushing Kimber, she's got to not be the murderer. And as Charles did mention in this show, we've had a lot of women murderers in the past couple of seasons. So now we get on to the fun part of the video where we get to theorize what is going on. Who is the murderer? Who killed Ben Glenroy? So I've seen a couple of things that I want to address. Number one, I have seen the Ben twin theory. So a lot of people have said that they think that possibly Ben is a twin, that they, you know, did acting careers very similar to Mary-Kate and Ashley, where they were both acting in one part, but like almost that it was like a secret and nobody knew that Ben had a twin. And we all heard Ben when he said to Charles, I was 8 years old and I was supporting my mom and brother. But we don't necessarily know that that brother is Dickie if, say, Dickie is the younger brother and he wasn't born yet. maybe Ben had a twin brother and that's who he was referencing at that time. But the biggest reason that people are saying that they think that Ben is a twin is because of the tattoos on his fingers, which can confirm do change. So we've got GC for girl cop is what it looks like, but 3 months earlier when he's rehearsing with Oliver in his room, it's CG. So it's almost like it's very unlikely that that was just a mistake on the part of the makeup artist and they messed up his tattoos in such a strong moment, because that's really going to throw us off. And I will say, if they do not explain why his tattoos have changed, it's going to be very frustrating, because we are watching a murder mystery show where we are actively trying to solve the murder, and if they have done this as a red herring but they're not going to address why it's changed, they just were trying to trick us, then it really takes away from the legitimacy of the show itself. Can we really trust the producers if they're going to change things up last minute like that? So I'm really hoping that there will be an explanation for it, but I don't think that the twin theory is super likely, just because it's so out of the water, it's so out of the blue. We have had no suggestions, and to have a twin and lie about your twin for your entire life as a celebrity, and for no one to ever know that you have a twin who looks just like you, seems extremely unlikely. So I'm wondering if it has to do with the timeline. He had CG 3 months before he went on stage. Maybe that meant something else and he ended up getting the tattoo changed to GC for girl cop. We're not sure, but it is definitely a weird phenomena to see that he has 2 different tattoos. It's what does that mean? Why did it switch? Then we also go on to have theories about Loretta. Is she a mom? Is she an aunt? Is she either of those things to Dickie or to Ben? I think that this theory is kind of the most likely and the one that I'm the most interested in right now. If Loretta had to give up Dickie at birth for whatever reason, and then they've become reunited again, it would explain why Dickie has such an interest in Loretta's success, as well as why they kind of were reacting to each other and had become so close so quickly. It would also possibly give a motive for murdering Ben, because Ben really treated Dickie pretty poorly and kind of made fun of him and teased him, so it's possible that, Loretta murdered Ben to protect Dickie, who she happened to know was her son. It could also be something to do with they're both her children, and she had given them to her sister, so she was Aunt Loretta, but really, she was a mother figure to them, whether literally or metaphorically. And so somehow there was a family issue and that got Ben killed, whether it was Dickie killed Ben and now Loretta's trying to cover up for him and protect him so that nobody knows that he did it, or if Loretta killed Ben to protect Dickie. That's kind of where I'm at with my theories. And I think this is a really good example of where it could totally be 2 different killers for 2 separate reasons. I think that that would probably be the most interesting twist of the season, if we have 2 different people who attempted to murder Ben at different times in different ways for different reasons. It just seems like it would be the most complicated, the most interesting, and I think that that would probably be my favorite way that the season could end. It also was pointed out that there's another Hamlet quote that was hanging in Ben's acting room, and on the wall it said, "The play's the thing." And this is a quote from Hamlet, and the entire quote, which I think is relevant, is, "The play's the thing, wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king." And so the whole idea is that Hamlet is putting on this play in order to catch his uncle in the act of murdering his father. So he's trying to have this play that will make his uncle feel guilty enough that he will admit to murdering the king. So I think that's interesting because, for one, they're in a play, but for 2, it's not just the play's the thing. The sentence and the point of that phrase goes on to mean so much more, and it's not hanging on the wall. So it feels like it could be a clue. And the question is, like, who is trying to seek out revenge in the cast? And was the revenge supposed to be on Ben, or was Ben seeking revenge? And, you know, is this idea of like the play is the way that you're going to prove that someone is guilty? And I thought it was interesting that there are not one, but two Hamlet quotes in the season so far, and we've only had 3 episodes. So I feel like this plot of like the familial relationship between like Hamlet trying to murder his uncle Claudius, who murdered his father, like it's just such an interesting dynamic. Is there a familial relationship somewhere in here that we're missing that we don't know about yet? So those are my best guesses for theories. I think right now, like if you said to me, Rebecca, today you have to tell me who killed Ben Glenroy based on what you know so far, I would say to you, okay, I think that Dickie had something to do with murdering Ben, and I think that possibly Loretta had something to do with murdering Ben. But I think that possibly, probably, the person who poisoned Ben and the person who pushed him down the elevator shaft are 2 separate people. And whether they were both aware that they were going to attempt murder or not, maybe one was covering up the other one's tracks. Like, that's what I think my theory is, that Dickie was disgruntled and was tired of Ben treating him the way that he was being treated, so he poisoned Ben only for Ben to spend an hour dead and then come back to life. And Loretta, who is somehow related to Dickie, mother, aunt, you know, maybe she gave him up at birth, whatever, is protecting him by finishing Ben off by pushing him down the elevator shaft. She thought that Ben would find out that Dickie had poisoned him, or that Dickie would admit to it out of guilt and grief. So she said, I'm gonna take the blame for this. I'm gonna cover up what happened. So that is my best guess so far. Let me know your theories down below in the comments. I love to hear them. Feel free to shoot me a message on Instagram if you want to talk more about the show and theories that you have. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit the subscribe button, like, share, comment, all those YouTube things. It means the world to me. Love you guys so much. And I will see you for season 3, episode 4 of Hulu's Only Murders in the Building. I'll see you guys next week. Bye!